The views expressed on the Warren and Bradley Show are not necessarily those held by the hosts, Warren and Bradley, nor those of the proprietors of the website, warrenandbradley.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Let's make some magic.
It is magic time. Hello, and welcome once again to the Warren and Bradley Show. I'm one of your hosts, Bradley Victor.
I'm the other host, Warren Van.
It is episode 71 of the Warren and Bradley Show. The weather has changed for the worse. I'm sorry to say. It's raining.
We're
it's
back
cold,
to normal.
It's wet. Back to normal. It's fine. I was wandering around again. I think every intro segment starts with me wandering around downtown, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And I don't know what I mean by this or what we can glean from this, but as I was standing around downtown yesterday, I noticed all these gay people with babies. And I don't know if they're like adopted or if it was like a closeted gay person who had impregnated a woman and then took the baby and ran off with it.
How limited is your world? Don't you know this is what's going on?
I know that people adopt babies and everything, and that's nice. It's good because there's plenty of babies that need to be adopted.
Well, and if you're a lesbian couple, you get one of them gets inseminated and they have a baby.
But I literally saw 5 different couples within the space of like 5 minutes. But I mean, okay, first of all, what's the percentage of the population that's gay? It's less than 10%.
But the percentage of the population that's gay that has babies that hangs out in downtown Bellingham is much higher.
Well, it just seemed like a disproportionate amount of people were gay and had babies walking around downtown. And I'm not making any sort of moral judgment on this. It's totally cool. But it was just odd. Like, there was this big lesbian with like a baby Bjorn.
Yeah.
And she had this baby and she was like, with the baby. Uh-huh. And then her partner came and I was like, okay, lesbian couple with a baby. Yeah. That was the first couple I saw. I was like, oh, that's nice. Then I saw a guy who was just like groomed to the T. And if I had just seen him walking by himself, I'd be like, okay, gay guy.
Yeah.
But he had a baby Bjorn and he was like, ha ha ha, with his baby. But then a woman came and he was holding her hand and called her honey. He's like, okay, honey, let's go. And he had the baby.
Well, that's probably not a gay man.
Well, either he's just the most effeminate heterosexual person in the world, or he was like closeted or something and had a baby.
Okay, this is the thing about your supposition here. You see a man with a baby with a wife.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's a gay man because he's lispy and well groomed?
He was the most effeminate heterosexual I'd ever seen in my life.
Oh.
And then I saw just a guy by himself. I don't know if he was single or not. And he had a stroller with a baby. And he was like, la la, singing some song to the baby as he was walking by.
Yeah.
And he was wearing crazy rhinestoned jeans and this really like fancy shirt, kind of silky looking and everything. And just like, I don't know, he just seemed way too well groomed to be straight with the baby. And I don't know, maybe
as a man who's mistaken for being a homosexual quite often, you're sure pretty willing to just
but there's like
assume.
There's me wearing tight pants, or there's me, I don't know, having laser hair removal done on my facial hair.
If you were mincing around with your tight pants and stuff one
I don't
day,
mince.
and you had like a little baby and you're like walking around, and then people will be like, look at that gay dude with a baby.
Okay, first of all, I do not have an effeminate voice in any way, shape, or form as I speak like this to make sure the point is driven home.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to defend my sexuality. Everyone knows clearly that I'm straight.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
Completely straight.
Yeah.
And if I had a baby and I was walking around with the baby, nobody would think, oh, look at the gay man with the baby. I don't know.
People wouldn't think that.
They wouldn't think that. I don't know what my point is, but I just found it struck me as odd that just in the space of 5 minutes, I saw all this going on. And then this really big fat man came up and he was wearing a tie. But he was one of these guys who's like 6'6" and huge, like not like morbidly obese, but just big, like a big barrel-chested dude. And he had this dress shirt on that was too small, so like the shirt tails were coming out of the top of his pants. And his tie barely made it past his sternum. It was just like, ooh, just kind of barely hanging there. And as he came up, he asked me for a light for a cigarette. And I gave him a light. And I was feeling folksy and friendly. And so I insulted him, but in a folksy, friendly way.
What'd you say?
I was like, yeah, buddy, your tie is way too short. And because I was going to give him some advice on how to tie his tie properly, because your tie is supposed to go right to the top of your waistline, basically.
Was the back skinny part of the tie longer than the front part?
It was way longer than the front part, yeah. He just didn't tie it properly.
Yeah.
And so I say this kind of in a joking, innocuous manner, and he went, "What?" Like, upset. And I went, yeah, just your tie. And he's like, "What am I supposed to do with it? I don't know what to do with it. I tried to tie this for like 5 minutes this morning. What am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
And I went, "Oh, okay, this is way more than I wanted to get into."
Yeah.
So then I ended up on the street. He took his tie off. I had to put it around myself and tie it and then give it back to him so he could put it back on.
Was he pleased when he put it back on?
He was happy with it. And I gave him the pointer. Like, I did a half Windsor knot for him because he just had like a crappy 4-in-hand knot. Yeah. It looked like shit. Because he's way too big to have a little tiny knot. You have to, there's things that you have to take into consideration. I'm not gay. And then I gave him the tie back and he was very pleased, but he was just so... if I were a giant 6'6" large man wearing a stubby little tie and somebody jokingly pointed that out to me, I don't think I'd get as upset as he did. Maybe he had an important job interview or something coming up and he was worried that his tie would embarrass him.
It's weird that this guy's wearing a tie.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on.
If you're that sloppy about your appearance, it's odd that you'd
Well, it
put
looks
on a
like
tie.
he had tried really hard.
Like, this is the best he could do.
Maybe. And
That's bad.
maybe he had it in his mind that, like, well, here we go. I'm all put together. And then some asshole lights a cigarette and then tells him that his tie is
Just got to get on YouTube and watch the tie tying videos. I used to not remember how to tie a tie, and then I'd get on there and they'd show me.
There's a lot of great instructional videos.
Oh,
Bow ties,
for anything in life
cravats,
at this point,
ascots.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I know I had a crab a while back.
You had crabs?
A crab.
Oh.
Singular.
Just
one crab.
Don't they breed like
Someone
crazy?
had given to me. I can't remember how I got it, but I was like, I'm going to cook this crab.
Oh.
So I didn't know what to do with it. I don't know how to clean this crab.
Okay, so we're talking about crabs.
We were talking about a crab.
Yeah, crabs that you eat.
And I watched a YouTube video, and the guy just showed me how to do it, and before you know it, I'm eating crab.
Did you boil it alive?
Yes.
I don't know.
So there's a disagreement about this.
What are you supposed to, like, knock them over the head or something?
There's other people that just rip them apart.
Ugh.
Like, they're live, and they just tear them apart, and they're like, there you go.
Yeah. I remember as a little kid, my dad had crab pots every once in a while, and we'd go out and get crabs. And I can remember my mom putting them in this big pot, and I could hear them, like, banging on the side of the pot. And I was always kind of horrified by that as a child.
It's hard to know how bad it is for them.
Yeah, I don't know. They say the whole thing is if the water warms up slowly, it's not horrible, but I don't know. That's what you're
supposed to do with frogs.
If you put me in a pot and slowly heated the water until it got to be boiling, I would be comfortable for a while, and then it would be boiling, and I'd start screaming.
But, I mean, that's the whole point, though. You're not a frog or a crustacean.
No, but they have to have some nerve endings going on there, don't they?
They do, but it gets back the whole concept of if they're suffering or if there's like a pain response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's difficult to say.
Better than me. The other annoying thing that happened, I don't know how many episodes ago, we mentioned the piss prongs, the trident piss, when the stream becomes split for some reason.
Yeah, I remember that.
The other day, I woke up completely befuddled and groggy and stumbled into the bathroom. I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm pretty much completely blind without glasses or contacts. And urinated. Finished urinating, shook it off, took a little toilet paper, wiped the tip off. That's important to do.
Yeah.
Put it back in my pants, and then took a step and went, oh! And slipped in the puddle of urine that apparently I had pissed all over the ground without noticing because the stream had been split. Fell in the urine. I was wearing these, like, pajama pant things.
I don't understand how these things happen to you.
I don't know. And basically was, like, on the ground, slightly dazed, in a puddle of my own urine.
It's odd just how careless you are around your own home.
It's not me being Well, I mean, I was
slipping in the bathroom. I haven't slipped in the bathroom since I was a child.
Well, I will say this. Normally, just stepping in a puddle of liquid, whatever it may be, is not enough to make me slip. I was barefoot, and the bathroom, for some reason, the linoleum in my bathroom is insanely slippery when it has liquid on it.
This is the strange thing about the way people floor bathrooms. Yeah. Right, it is slick when you get water on it a lot of the time, and then people slip in there and they fall. And, surprise, surprise, they're dead. Yeah, but I was, you know how sometimes your equilibrium's off when you first wake up in the morning? You're kind of stumbling about. No? See, this I wasn't described this a few times that you, like, get out of bed and you're just, like you've been hibernating for months. And you're, like, just stumbling around, like, peeing all over the floor and slipping and falling. I think we've talked about this before. I don't think my experience is normal because... No. I have this weird thing where I feel like a mummy. I'm all dehydrated when I wake up. I can't see because I don't have my contacts in, and I'm all dizzy. You have that bizarre delusion about your water going back into your flesh as you're drinking water.
It's weird. And I knock into things and just stumble around all over. It's really strange.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get alive.
You have to adjust to being awake.
Yeah.
I just pop out of bed.
Yeah.
I'm ready for action before you know it.
Well, I'm not tired necessarily. I'm just not up to speed.
Yeah. I actually went and had breakfast with my family this morning. And I was very tired, and I slept right up to when I had to leave. And I just popped right out of bed and was ready for action, ready to converse with my family. Not a problem.
Well, you're just much better than me.
Oh, yeah. And then made my way over to the casino.
No.
Silver Reef.
No. The local Indian casino.
Yes, gambled away a few dollars there. As me and the girlfriend were driving by, we drove by the convenience store out there by the casino. And we were speculating, is that where you buy your cigarettes?
It is, yes.
Okay, that's where you go.
Yeah.
Because she was like, maybe we should get Brad some cigarettes. And I'm like, no, that's weird.
Well, that'd be nice.
I thought you thought it might be nice, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to come out here and buy him cigarettes and bring him cigarettes. It just seems too weird to me.
I don't see what's weird about that.
Because there's a giant sign on the convenience store that says cigarettes.
No,
like...
I think that's pretty much all their business is selling cigarettes.
Because it's weird because there's a casino and this like convenience store gas station in the middle of an area. It's just a bunch of fields.
Yeah.
And that's like it. That's the only thing there.
Yeah.
It's the only reason you drive there.
What else do you need?
Apparently not much. The gambling action. John Cicada, apparently, or whatever his name is. Some performer is going to be out there. There's a lot of posters about that.
And so usually like Gary Puckett in the Union Gap or something like that coming out to the Silver Reef Casino.
Yeah.
Look forward to that. Speaking of cigarettes, I noticed downtown there's an entire store dedicated to e-cigarettes now.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah.
I don't get that.
It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, how much variation is there in e-cigarettes? How many different models, makes do you need? I can understand a smoke shop because
Don't
there's
you just buy
tobacco
one?
and pipes. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. But I spent a good 10 minutes out front of it smoking my normal cigarette.
You didn't go inside and check out the...
No, I just wanted to harass the people who were going in and getting their e-cigarettes because they could see me outside.
Were people going in there?
Oh, yeah. There were a bunch of people in there browsing around. I don't know what was going on, but I was just like... smoking in front.
When you're smoking with those e-cigarettes, it makes a little like haze comes out. So it comes
it's like
out,
some
right?
weird water vapor.
Yeah, so it looks like you're smoking still.
I guess I don't think it works really. I don't know. It's all it is delivering nicotine to you, but I don't think it really feels or tastes like a cigarette.
There's nicotine in it.
That's the whole point. Is
nicotine delivery system.
Delivering nicotine without basically what causes the cancer is the fact that you're inhaling hot smoke.
Yeah,
it's not the nicotine.
No, it's not the nicotine, but I know a few people were putting on nicotine patches and taking this like thing and smoking it, and that was just taking care of the like oral fixation they had, but it's delivering the nicotine as well.
See, that would be more for me because I don't think I really care as much about the nicotine as the oral like hand-to-mouth fixation thing, so I might need to pretend to smoke something.
If you had to choose between an electronic cigarette without any nicotine or between having nicotine patches with no electronic cigarette, you might take the electronic cigarette.
If I were to quit, I would just fucking quit.
Oh boy.
It's no, I'm serious. Like, I don't think this replacement therapy really works for people because then they just get addicted to the e-cigarettes. So I don't know. If you're going to quit, the trouble is people quit when they don't really want to quit. They just think they should, and so they do the shit. It's the same with like if you're an alcoholic or something. You're not gonna, or if you're a heroin addict and you start taking methadone, you become more addicted to the methadone than you ever were to the heroin to begin with. So just do it cold turkey, people. Especially if you're alcoholics.
This guy's smoking here, telling people how to quit smoking.
Actually, that's a horrible advice for alcoholics, because I think you can actually die from alcohol withdrawal if you just stop drinking.
You can get the DTs or something.
Yeah, apparently it's much more dangerous than withdrawing from heroin. Apparently heroin withdrawal sucks, but you're not going to die.
Well, I think heroin withdrawal is very painful and like
but it won't kill you. But alcohol could actually kill you.
Somehow your body gets dependent upon it, and then if you cut it off too quick, you can start shaking and die.
Yeah, whatever. I was noticing today, I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not, Warren, but I was coming up with a theory on human behavior. And being able to judge the kind of person someone is by the way they treat public areas. And let me give you an example.
Okay.
I was in the bagelry, and there's a little coffee station where you can put your cream in your coffee, and there's other condiments and things.
We'll put a schematic of the bagelry up.
Yeah, we should.
I think in the last episode you're describing like where you're sitting and stuff.
So I went up there, and I noticed there was like a puddle of cream there, and there's like sugar packets strewn all over the place. And the person who was there before me, I'd seen them pouring cream into their coffee cup, and then slopping it all over the side. And then when they were pouring sugar, they're just getting it all over the place. And they just kind of went, whatever. And just walked away. So I went up there, I did my thing, and I got some napkins afterwards. And even though I hadn't made the mess, I cleaned the mess up and put it back in their little garbage container that they had there. And then I was thinking about when I used to work at Bloomingdale's years and years ago when I lived in L.A., the way people would just come through my section like locusts and take clothing and shake them out everywhere and just leave devastation in their wake. Had no regard at all, didn't care because they weren't the ones that had to clean it up. There were just these peons, these servants who would come later and clean it all up for them. And I was just becoming very aware of this yesterday, watching people went into the bathroom afterwards, and you know how there's just like urine on the ground, there's toilet paper strewn everywhere. And I know you're a pretty fastidious person and fairly... You have regard for other people's property. So I'm assuming you're the kind of person who cleans up after yourself in a public area. I don't know if it's just narcissism or not caring at all. Or,
that's just I think that's just the tragedy of the commons that we've been experiencing forever. That's just what happens to areas like that.
Do you think that my theory that seeing how someone treats a common area can actually tell you a lot about their personality holds true? Or do you think that you can still be a good person and leave your shit all over the place?
I'm pretty sure you can still be a good person and still spill like some sugar at the bagory.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think that's... I think it might be a trait of people that maybe they're a little bit sloppy, but I don't think it necessarily reflects on them and their integrity.
But you could be sloppy and then clean it up afterwards. That's what I'm talking about, is being sloppy and then just being like, fuck it, and walking away.
Yeah.
Like you get to a table at the bagelry. This is the only place I ever go. This is the only frame of reference I have.
I know.
And there's just crumbs all over and like just like cream cheese smeared on top of it and everything.
Yeah.
And if I get, some of the onion falls off my bialy, I sweep it up. I get rid of it.
Yeah.
I clean it up.
You're a saint.
Well, it's not even... I just think that's normal, isn't it? But apparently it's not.
No. Not necessarily in a restaurant either.
Yeah.
Because people stuff spilling off people's food all the time. And then, the staff at the restaurant oftentimes comes over and wipes down the table and takes that stuff off.
Yeah.
The issue is, of course, that a lot of places they don't do that. Like the Subway I go to occasionally at work, I don't think they leave the area behind the vegetables there. They never come out and do anything. So you get there and you sit down, it's just a bunch of crap all over the table, old crumbs and everything. You just have to sweep that all off.
Well, yeah, and that's the difference between a sit-down fancy restaurant where you have waitresses or a place where you kind of bus your own table and serve yourself. When you're bussing your own table and you know that there isn't necessarily going to be an employee coming or a busboy coming in the meantime and wiping with a rag and cleaning everything up, then it's your responsibility as a member of this society to clean that area so the next customer doesn't have to sit in your filth.
I agree. I mean, you should be less messy,
Yeah.
You don't want to leave your crap everywhere. You don't want to litter in general either.
No.
It's just better for everyone.
It's a bunch of selfish assholes running around.
But what about your cigarette butts?
I usually put those in garbage cans.
I believe I've heard about you being called out in the past.
I did once. That caught me throwing one on the ground.
That was the only time?
Well, it's not the only time I've ever thrown a cigarette on the ground, but
yeah.
I'm not extreme. If I'm nowhere near a garbage can, then I'll just throw it in the sewage drain so it'll go into the ocean.
See,
then so the fish can enjoy my nicotine later on. But that's the difference between... I guess I look at it as something that's going to confront somebody else. Like if I'm sitting at a table and I make a huge mess and then I just leave it there, the next person is going to come to that table and be like, "Ugh, what's this crap?" But if I throw my cigarette in a drain, it'll just float away and nobody will ever see it.
Exactly. See what I mean? And then there's somebody at the other end that's getting bombarded by these cigarette butts being like,
"Well, these homeless people sleeping in storm drains or something."
How inconsiderate.
They'd be happy about it.
How inconsiderate it is to have all these butts wash out. I've heard a lot more about butts in the past, and I've heard about, people not wiping up at the bagelry.
Yeah.
As far as something that people get annoyed about.
Well, they're biodegradable. Made of cotton and paper.
So are the things you leave on the table at the restaurant.
Yeah, but you don't have time for it to biodegrade while you're waiting for your table to come back.
So you think it's fine if you're doing it outside, but not inside?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the rule.
It's a crazy rule.
It's a good rule. Quit poking holes in my theories about society. Should we break and do some Celebrity Minute here?
Sure, let's do it.
All right.
Celebrity Minute on the Warren and Bradley Show.
All right, Celebrity Minute. top story this week. I'm sure many of you have already heard that Roger Ebert, famous film critic for the Chicago Tribune, has died. Was he Chicago Tribune or Chicago?
No, Sun-Times.
Sun-Times.
He worked for the Sun-Times. Siskel worked for the Tribune.
Okay, now it's Phillips is the Tribune, I think, right?
I don't know who
I
the
can't
Tribune
remember.
does.
Michael Phillips.
Is that who he used to do the show with? He did it with Roper. I don't know who Roper
did it with
worked
Roper for a while, and then I think it was Michael Phillips. I can't remember.
Speaking of my trip to Subway, I was at Subway this week when this happened, and they have big flat screen TVs up there, and they kept showing his like mangled face and stuff, and I was trying to eat my sandwich, and I was like turning away, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's fine. I know he had a battle with cancer and stuff, but it's like if I'm eating my Subway sandwich, it's not what I want to be staring at.
Yeah, he had pretty much most of his jaw removed.
Yeah.
I think that was in 2006, so he obviously had to retire from the television show. He was still writing reviews up until the point of his death. He had thought that he had a fracture, and it turned out to be cancer, and so he took a leave of presence, as he called it, where he was just reviewing films that he wanted to review. And the death wasn't completely unexpected, but kind of sudden. He was 70 years old. Of course, there's all sorts of tributes going out. He was the very first film critic to win a Pulitzer Prize.
Yes.
In 1975. He actually wrote a screenplay for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is directed by Russ Meyer. By all accounts, a horrible movie, but it's gotten kind of a cult following after a while. I don't know. He was all right. He seemed to be kind of missing a step here and there. I would read some of his reviews sometimes, and he would harp on something where this wasn't explained in the plot. It made no sense. But then I was like, actually, it did completely make sense. You just weren't paying attention or couldn't understand what was happening. But in terms
well,
of...
he's the people's critic in that way.
Yeah, in terms of his taste, it was... He wasn't pretentious, at least.
No, he definitely wasn't pretentious.
He was good film critic.
He was fine. Yeah, I mean,
been around since the 60s.
And we'll always remember Siskel and Ebert because we used to watch that as children.
Yeah, such a weird... I actually was watching old clips of old... I don't know if it was at the movies or in the balcony or whatever the hell it was. And it was from the 80s. I was watching him review... I think it was Return of the Jedi or something. My God, it was the cheesiest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I don't remember it being that way.
I remember it being not having like really great production values.
Yeah.
It was on public television.
Well, I think it was originally. Yeah. And then I think it was the mid-'80s that it switched.
They moved to syndication or something?
Syndication or something.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was originally on public television just in the Chicago area, and then it was nationwide.
And they syndicated nationwide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'll be missed.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird things when a celebrity dies, like... and no other celebrity has died in the few days around him dying.
Right.
So we're hearing a lot about Ebert.
Oh, yeah. That's all I've been hearing about lately.
It's been like an Ebert-centric week, well as like usually somebody more famous will die like a day afterwards and you'll never hear anything more about it.
Beyonce and Jay-Z under fire for Cuba visit. This is from WENN. Beyonce and Jay-Z took a wedding anniversary trip to Cuba. Pissed some people off, mostly Cubans, who are protesting all the civil rights violations because people are still being beaten and jailed, and it's a horrible, repressive communist regime.
Yeah.
They were granted a visa by the Tourism Bureau of Cuba, so they're like, let's get Beyonce and Jay-Z over here. You're shilling for a communist government.
They're not shilling for Cuba, are they?
They are because, okay, let's say, Warren, you were a famous celebrity of the caliber of Beyonce or Jay-Z, and the Cuba Tourism Board was like, Warren, we want you to come to Cuba.
Is that what happened?
Yes, because you can't get a visa to go.
Yes, everyone can go to Cuba.
No. You can't.
I've known lots of people who have gone to Cuba.
U.S. citizens are technically prohibited from flying to Cuba for tourism, and you have to obtain special travel licenses from the American government.
Or you can go 60 miles north of Vancouver International Airport and just fly there.
But a source tells Reuters that the pair was invited by officials for Cuba's tourism ministry.
So they had approval from the State Department?
I don't even know if it was from the State Department, but they were invited by Cuba's tourist ministry.
Great.
So it's the same thing going down and visiting with Hugo Chavez when he was alive. You're tacitly giving your approval for their horrible regimes.
Going somewhere doesn't mean you're approving of the government of that area.
It's creepy. And
I think it's fine. As far as like
Cuba.
The Cuba thing where it's like we have to isolate Cuba because it's some threat to us. It's like, who cares? That whole regime's going to fall in a little bit, and I'm sure Beyonce and Jay-Z going there is just opening it up more, and it'll...
Well, there is a point to be said for the more we get our obnoxious celebrities over there, maybe the more their culture will open up and become just as bankrupt as ours. But
Cuba is not a threat to us militarily.
To me, it has nothing to do with whether or not they're a threat, but it is a repressive, horrible regime.
Yeah,
still.
So is like the majority of the world.
That's true.
Yeah, so you can't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere, people. You're tacitly giving your approval to human rights violations. All right, I think the other week we were talking about the swatting phenomena. swatting of idiots calling the police
to
a celebrity's house, but I think I cut it out of the show. I can't remember.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
It was in the show?
I don't know.
I remember talking about it.
Yeah, I think it was where the police have been called to Justin Bieber's house or something with the SWAT team breaking down the doors with assault rifles.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a huge rash of this lately. This is from the Associated Press. Police have swarmed the homes of at least 5 stars this week, only to learn that all was well at the mansions owned by Justin Timberlake, Selena Gomez, and others. Apparently, there's been a huge uptick in swatting recently, and Los Angeles police are getting annoyed because it's taking resources away from actual crimes.
Yeah, it's a bad thing.
And they're not allowed to just beat people on the streets like they normally are.
What are they doing to the people that are making these calls?
I don't know if they've caught many people. They caught that one 12-year-old a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what they did to him. They swatted him.
So I hope this is what I'll say about this. Severely punish people who are caught for doing this.
It's ridiculous.
Severely punish them, and then it will stop.
So look at this. In April 5th, Selena Gomez was at home when cops were like, broke down her door. Apparently someone had called and said that her mother had been shot by her father and then was going to burn the house down.
Yeah.
On April 4th, the day before, they were called to Rihanna's place. She wasn't home at the time. April 3rd, Sean Combs' place. Justin Timberlake on the 5th. On February 8th, my birthday, Ashton Kutcher, that was the 12-year-old boy who got arrested. We've had Chris Brown. We've had Bruce and Kris Jenner, Tom Cruise. You would think, I guess the cops are now sending fewer SWAT team members to these houses because they're thinking, okay, if it's a celebrity's house.
But it's a difficult thing for the emergency responders because if something actually was happening and they send like Barney Fife out there and he like can't handle the situation, then it looks very bad for them.
You have to respond with the force that you think is necessary.
You have to respond to what you think is necessary, and that this system exists for people to be able to call and get a response because things are emergency.
Right.
If people are abusing that system, even if they're children, punish them severely and make an example out of them. And don't tell me all this bullshit about it. You're ruining somebody's life. Fuck them. Well, don't do this. This is not acceptable behavior.
They're trying to train the 911 operators to weed out these calls. I don't know what the training involves. If it's like, yeah, there's somebody shooting someone at this person's house. And then maybe you'll know that it's a fake call.
I hope they can just track them down and punish them.
Yeah.
That's a way to stop things like this.
Swat the swatters. Wesley Snipes leaves Pennsylvania prison after tax sentence.
Oh, he's been in all this time, huh?
He's been in, was it 3 or 4 years? From the Associated Press as well. Snipes has been released from a federal prison in Pennsylvania. He was convicted in 2008 on tax charges, but he was released Tuesday. So, wow, yeah, 5 years.
Pretty long for a celebrity to be in prison.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. Apparently, he belonged to a group that challenged the government's right to collect taxes. And he hadn't filed tax returns for at least a decade and owed millions of dollars in back taxes. I don't know.
He tried to make a principled stand about
he's
the
not
constitutional...
Henry David Thoreau at Walden Pond. You know, it's Wesley Snipes, star of Demolition Man and the Blade trilogy. Come on.
He just wanted to keep his money.
It's so weird to me that he would think that he could get away with this. And if it was some sort of moral stance, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. I don't understand all these people who get in trouble when they're millionaires. It's one thing if... The problem is if you're a millionaire, you do have to pay millions of dollars in taxes. Yeah, you have to pay
like,
pretty much 50%.
This is awful.
Probably seems a little worse, but, you know, if you're just working in an office and it just gets automatically taken out of your check, because these people are independent contractors, they have to actually give a check to the government every year. And that might hurt a little bit, I guess. But still, 5 years in jail. Come on, Wesley. I think we'll close out Celebrity Minute this week with an Amanda Bynes story. She has recently tweeted... I have an eating disorder, so I have a hard time staying thin.
You got more than that, Amanda.
I don't know. Again, it's been about a week since she did anything ridiculous. So does she just have a calendar that says, say something strange on Twitter so people will talk about me again?
Yeah, she just needs attention.
Or is she so out of touch that she just blurts out whatever comes into her empty head?
Yeah,
and
probably a combination of both.
Combination of the two. She also claims that there's somebody impersonating her in New York and getting photos taken of her.
Okay, that's oh boy, that's when people start saying things like that. Then you're like, oh wow, you're having some. Yeah, you're starting to break.
Yeah,
psychologically.
Well, we can only look forward to what's going to happen next. I guess she did not appear in court for the pre-trial hearing for her DUI arrest, but her lawyer went there and got a continuance.
Oh, good.
So.
What a fun job.
We'll hear a little more about that. All right, that's enough for Celebrity Minute for this week's Warren and Bradley Show.
All right.
This has been Celebrity Minute on the Warren and Bradley Show.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Sitting at home, bored, alone. You have Netflix streaming, but you don't know what to watch. Well, now you do with Netflix Picks on the Warren and Bradley Show.
Hey, it's been a while since the last Netflix Picks, and I really wanted to hear the theme song, so that's why I decided that we'd have Netflix Picks this week.
So what samurai are you interested in telling us about today, Brad?
You know, this week, Warren, unfortunately, we do not have any samurai movies.
Oh, no.
What we do have is a classic from 1986. I know it's not a movie you enjoy, but it's Room with a View, currently streaming on Netflix. In this adaptation of E.M. Forster's novel, Lucy travels to Florence with her chaperone in tow. There she falls for a fellow countryman's moody son, but like any proper Englishwoman of that era, she must fight her feelings, and it's a losing battle.
Yeah, no, it's always a losing battle when you fight with your feelings in a movie.
I love this movie. This is one of the very first Merchant Ivory productions based on the novel by E.M. Forster. It takes place during the Edwardian period.
Yes. I like this. You're going to be holding your baby and someone's going to be walking by and hear you. And you're like, how does that guy have a baby?
It's a good movie. Helena Bonham Carter was only like 18, I think, at the time. When I saw this as a child, I don't know, probably when I was 10 or 11. I saw it after it had been released. I think we got it on VHS or something.
Yeah.
And I had a huge crush on Helena Bonham Carter when I watched this as a child. Also starring Julian Sands, Denham Elliott, Judi Dench, Daniel Day-Lewis, the who's who of British actors.
I don't think I've seen this movie. I've read the novel many years ago.
The novel, I'm not a huge fan of the novel, but the movie's good.
Really?
Yeah.
I know I've seen the movie of Howard's End, and I think that's what I was thinking of when I was thinking of this movie.
Oh, okay.
That's different.
Again, based on E.M. Forster, again, starring Helena Bonham Carter.
So you see how I might be confused.
Yeah, I can see how you could make that mistake.
Yeah.
But no, this is great. It has kind of the same archetypes of most of these period pieces, where it has a young woman repressed by her society. And
you identify to that?
As a young woman, yes. Meeting a man who is a little bit on the outside, a little avant-garde, but she's engaged to be married to Daniel Day-Lewis's character, who's basically a prig, uptight, stuffy, kind of an asshole.
I can't stand that type.
And she struggles against her own feelings, and, you know, it's fun. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Currently streaming on Netflix. The next pick I have is Wes Anderson's very first feature, Bottle Rocket, from 1996. I'm sure many of you probably have seen this, but it's kind of interesting. It's not an amazing movie. I mean, it's his very first film. He had originally written a short with Owen Wilson. They screened that at festivals, and I can't remember. I think it was James Caan had seen it and liked it, and that's how they got financing for the full-length version of it.
James Caan ends up in the movie, right?
Yes. But you can see sort of the genesis of a lot of the weird Wes Andersonisms that develop later on in his movies, and it's fun. Owen Wilson's really amusing in it. Luke Wilson's in it as well. The official Netflix description: in this offbeat comedy, a trio of Texas friends tries to embark on a life of crime. After knocking over a bookstore and going on the lam, they bungle their way into a huge heist engineered by a silver-tongued con artist. It's kind of like a student film in a way.
Yeah.
The plotting, the dialogue, but you can see where all these actors, you can see where Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson are going to go later on in life, kind of by seeing this. You can see Wes Anderson's already becoming obsessed with strange, quirky details, and it's fun. It's
an amusing movie.
Lighthearted comedic romp. Now, Warren, I hear you have a Netflix picks?
Yes, I do. I've been watching The Story of Film, An Odyssey, which is, I think, a 15-part British documentary about the history of film, narrated by this Northern Irish film critic,
Mark Cousins.
It was on I don't know, Channel 4 or something, and on TV in Britain, and it's very entertaining. It's really interesting. It's kind of a personal journey through film, and it kind of talks about a lot about the history of it. And it's very odd too, because it's strange the way they shot it, because this weird Irishman's just kind of like slowly narrating these things, and he'll tell you a story about something, then he'll like tell you about some director, some actor, or where something happened in film, and then he'll have like footage of that area from now, and he'll always be, and that happened here. And you'll be like, oh, and they'll show for a couple seconds, they'll show like this house or something now, and it's like, oh, it's very nice.
That's kind of cool, showing the context and like,
it's a pleasant journey. It's kind of slow paced and it's relaxed, but it's a nice journey through the history of film.
From 2011, guided by film historian Mark Cousins, this bold 15-part love letter to the movies begins with the invention of motion pictures at the end of the 19th century and concludes with the multi-billion-dollar globalized digital industry of the 21st.
He does try to break with some of the conventional narrative of film that you hear about, and I think he gets a little bit out there, and he shows you some things that maybe, aren't as popular, as much of a part of the canon as some other things.
That's interesting. I'll have to check this out. So there's 15 episodes, each around an hour long?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's pretty long. I'm only about halfway through it.
I like films and film, so I think I'll watch this.
Yeah, I think you might like it. Yeah.
All right. This has been Netflix Picks on this week's Warren and Bradley Show.
This has been Netflix Picks on the Warren and Bradley Show.
I wanted to bring up a subject.
Oh, no.
Might be me being an asshole again and you berating me for it. But
okay, I felt like it. When you started, I felt like that's what's going to happen.
The subject of trauma.
Yes.
Now, we sort of touched on this last week with being raped by a bear. But now, obviously, we're not old men, and so it's hard for me to put this in context exactly and take a historical perspective of it. But it seems to me that everyone is obsessed with past trauma informing your present.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a foregone conclusion now that even before you have any memories, if you're a year and a half years old and you were crying in your crib and your mother didn't pick you up right away, then you're going to have these abandonment issues for the rest of your life, and you'll somehow be fucked up and your relationships will be more difficult and you'll have to have therapy and you'll have to work through these issues.
Yeah.
What strikes me about this, and everyone seems to agree that this is the case, and I don't know if this is the case or not.
Yeah. It's probably the case.
I just kind of go along with what everyone else says. But if you think about the way our lives are now, and then juxtapose that with the way our lives would have been 10,000 years ago, wasn't everyone alive on the earth back then? Wouldn't they just be crippled with all the past trauma that they would have had to have experienced? When your father is slaughtered by a cave bear when you're 4 years old, when other tribes are coming and attacking you on a daily basis, when you're starving often. So isn't living with trauma the human condition, and isn't that what we're supposed to do? And why should it be so crippling to us all the time? Do you get my point?
Yeah, but it is.
But is it? Or is it we've just decided that it is?
No, but okay. If you look at yourself, look at your own life.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you were crippled in any way?
I don't know. I have no idea what I would be like if there hadn't been any trauma in my life. But I also think if there's no trauma in your life, then you're not a human. Because
I think it's the difference between experience and trauma.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a child. Like those kids in the orphanages in like Russia or in Romania that no one touches for the couple of years of their life, and they get really weird because they don't develop any sort of like natural bonds.
No bond.
It's things like that it's like, well, suck it up, kid. But it's like those things are formative in your brain, and those connections are formative.
Yeah, and that's an extreme example of somebody being just completely shut off from human contact. And I think that's important. And I would say that 10,000 years ago, I'm sure you probably had a little more closeness with the members of your family, because
maybe with your like clan or your tribe or something. Yeah.
But it just seems, do you get my point though? Like, it almost seems like maybe we try to categorize things as trauma now because we don't have the same kinds of trauma that used to exist when human beings used to live in a crazy, violent, chaotic world where you never knew if you're going to live the next day.
To a certain degree, yes, but also a lot of the conditions that humans lived in was just profound monotony broken by extreme violence every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess when you have trauma in our society and the way we live now, and you have a hard time, and it cripples you in some way dealing with life later on when you grow older, it doesn't have that much to do with what happened in the past and the skills you needed to deal with the world in the past. So it's a more brutal, simple kind of thing. Whereas now that sort of trauma manifests itself in different ways because the world's more complicated.
Maybe.
The way we live is more complicated. and and the weird, social connections, the way you exist with your job, the way you're willing to do new things, all these things are influenced by what happened when you were a child. And I think calling it trauma and then just giving up and like going to bed and like weeping about it is one thing, but acknowledging the fact that like things happened and they influenced you isn't bad or detrimental, as long as you're using that constructively and you're looking at it as something that happened to me and I'm going to try to deal with it.
Maybe it's the idea of trauma necessarily being crippling, and that because I've heard people talking about their therapists and how they'd be dead without therapy, and they talk about all the trauma they've experienced in the past, and the things they talk about as being traumatic seem insanely mundane and not really very traumatic at all. Mm-hmm. And the idea that without having talk therapy or, emotionally focused therapy or whatever kind of therapy they're going through, they wouldn't be able to function. So how did our hunter-gatherer ancestors function without talk therapy? Maybe they
functioned, but I mean, it was a simpler existence. But you survived.
Simpler.
It was like the NCAA tournament. Survive and advance. And I think now we're looking at it like maybe that's the disconnect you're seeing. We're not looking at so much as the fact that it's survive and advance. It's more like survive and thrive. And we want people to thrive and to be happy and to live a more complete life, rather than just stay alive barely and then die.
Well, I think in many ways, maybe that's why people are crippled by trauma, is because we're living, I think it's actually a less complete life, because we have to invent ways to become satisfied. Whereas before, if you had food and you had shelter and you reproduced and raised your children, we weren't striving towards, I need a career and I need to feel like I'm really making a difference and I need to do this and this and this. I think when you're more in touch with those primal needs and those things that drive survival, you don't have time to be crippled by trauma.
But I do know what you're saying about the fact that we don't look at life in the same way, maybe. I think you'd be a happier person if you just looked at life as the fact that you survived, you had enough food, you had enough clothing, and you lived and you were happy with it, right?
Yeah.
The constantly striving for more and more and more, of course, is detrimental because you can never get enough. And that's something that, that's just the nature of existence.
I was watching part of a documentary the other day that called Happy People.
Yeah.
Life in the Taiga or something like that. It was Werner Herzog. I don't think he had filmed it, but he had edited it together and then did the narration for it.
Oh, good, the narration. Nothing makes me happier than hearing him do narration.
But it's so funny to me because it was this documentary showing these people who have lived, just completely isolated, way off in Siberia in the taiga. I mean, they have a couple snowmobiles and a couple rifles, but for the most part, they're trapping sables and breaking through ice and fishing in the ice. And you can tell by watching the film that Werner Herzog has this ideal of a simple life where people aren't constrained by our horrible technologically driven society and all the complications and everything. And so it was funny, his narration describing the idyllic lives of these people in Siberia, but then juxtaposed with the images of these ravaged-looking people, having these...
But Werner Herzog's obsession is with the fact that, nature
man
is
and
brutal.
Nature and... but he also is obsessed with the idea that man needs to be in touch with nature and living within nature, and he thinks of our modern society as
too alienated from nature.
Too alienating. And so you could see that he thought of this life in Siberia as idyllic and simple, but then I'm sure if you took most of those people and said, hey, let's move you to a nice suburb outside of Chicago and give you some Starbucks and some warm clothes, and you don't have to worry about wolves and...
Yeah, but okay. Yes.
Yeah.
They'd be happier for a week.
Maybe.
They'd be very unhappy after that.
And that's what I can't decide. I can't decide if struggling against tangible things on a daily basis, even though it might seem horrible, is actually preferable to struggling against the intangible things that we're always struggling against.
I think if you're struggling against the tangible things, you're like, God, I wish I could struggle against intangible things. When you get to struggling against intangible things, it opens up an entirely different challenge. And the challenge is it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on around you. It has everything to do with what's going on in your own head and how you're handling things. And that's the real struggle. I mean, you're talking about trauma. Mm-hmm. The struggle isn't the fact that the trauma is continuing, you're still being beaten or something. The fact is it's what's going on inside your mind. You can't get past things. And it turns into this thing where it's that is where the challenge is, and that's much harder to deal with than just to fight the tiger. If you're punching a tiger or something, at least you know what you need to do at that point, right?
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity about you have to make a million choices all the time.
Well, and I think it's kind of telling that in modern society, a lot of the fantasies that people seem to have are about these survival situations, apocalyptic scenarios, or war, or
why The Walking Dead is by far the most popular show on cable television ever.
And maybe we do have this desire to get back to a more simple struggle where we know what we have to do and we know what we're fighting against. And
well, I mean, that's what movies do, right?
Yeah,
they serve that impulse, especially like an action movie. It's good versus evil, and good struggling against evil, and yada yada yada.
Well, I fantasize about things that would be considered horribly traumatic. I fantasize about being involved in violence and having to defend myself and living this kind of scrabbling existence out in the woods somewhere or something and being attacked by creatures. And it's like, why am I fantasizing about that? It's weird. It's kind of strange.
Because it's like your life is so boring, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Of course, we've talked about this before. If you were out there getting attacked by these weird creatures and stuff, you'd be like, God, I wish I could just go back to my apartment and just hang out and read a book. But then you get back to your apartment, you like have a book, you're like, this isn't enough. And then you have to start doing something else weird.
Yeah. We keep coming back to having to go out and kill prostitutes to feel alive.
Do you think those prostitute killers, it made them feel alive? I don't know what the pathology is.
I think it made the prostitutes feel dead.
Yeah, definitely. Very dead. I guess it would lead to a very thrilling existence. I don't know. You're always worrying about being caught for murdering all these prostitutes.
I don't know if they worry about it.
They must, because I mean, they worry in the sense that they're good at concealing it.
I would worry about it if I were killing prostitutes, but then I wouldn't be killing prostitutes. So no, I don't know.
There's just no upside to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young women, don't be prostitutes because people will come and try to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't watch the movie Pretty Women.
Don't ever get yourself into the position in society where you're so far on the fringes that psychotic people think that they can kill you without anyone noticing.
And not only think, but actually be able to
succeed quite often.
Succeed, and then go on for years and years and years.
Homeless people, prostitutes, drug addicts. Yeah.
That's good advice. It's good advice for everyone not to become a prostitute or a homeless person.
Or a drug addict. There you go.
Tips for life.
So we were talking about these extreme survival situations, and for some reason it just popped into my head. We've talked about being stranded before, out in the desert or maybe the snowy tundra. You're struggling for survival. You can't find any food. There aren't any plants. There aren't any coconuts. There isn't any fruit growing on the trees.
It's just you and CeeLo trying to walk across the lake.
Yeah, we did have CeeLo and the beluga whales. Probably slaughter a beluga whale. But if it's you and me walking, let's say we were going to visit the happy people in the taiga that Werner Herzog was talking about. And on our way there, our helicopter crashes. We're stranded.
You should never get in a helicopter.
No. And we're struggling we don't really know exactly. We don't have a compass. My iPhone, the compass app
We're somewhere on the
anymore.
Eurasian landmass.
Yes, which is very large.
Yeah.
The taiga itself is larger than the entire country of the United States. So we're wandering about aimlessly. Not a lot of vegetation. There's just scrub, basically. You try to dig into the ground, it's frozen a few inches down. There might be sables running around through the forest, but we can't catch any of this shit. We're not the happy people of the taiga. We don't know how to trap. And so finally, I get to the point, because I'm skin and bones already. I have no fat reserves at all. I succumb to exhaustion and starvation and die.
Yeah.
And you're out there with my corpse. And it's frozen, it's cold, so it's not rotting. It's not going to go bad. At what point do you have to get to where you start whittling a little off there and start eating it?
Well, it's interesting because, if you die, and I'm already exhausted at this point, right? Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? Pick you up and carry you around to eat
my corpse?
Yeah, exactly. You know
you'd have to just cut off some slabs and take it with you, maybe.
Yeah. So I'd have to butcher you.
Yeah.
I have to think far enough ahead that I wouldn't be so hungry that I'd want to eat you now, but I'd be like, I'm going to take these nice ribs and take this.
Well, you wouldn't.
And that.
Yeah. I mean, you could leave the bones, leave the head, probably the genitals, and I don't know. I mean, would you eat me? Number one, which parts would you feel comfortable eating? You'd have to slice me up while I was still not frozen yet.
Or else I wouldn't be able to slice you up.
Yeah. I don't know what you've got, like a little pocket knife or something.
I like the ribs idea for some reason.
The ribs?
That seems like the least disgusting.
Is there a lot of meat on these bones?
No, but I mean, it's delicious meat when you eat ribs.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about human ribs. Cow ribs are good.
Lean and stuff, and you just kind of
Well, I'm very lean.
Get a little bit of meat off of there. Probably your shoulders and arms and stuff, that area.
I got good shoulders.
That's less gross to me for some reason.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do the rump roast or anything like that.
Rump roast gets too close to the rectum. And maybe your thighs. Your thighs would make a nice chunk of meat too, right?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't be able to cook
There'd
it.
There'd be a little... See, if there's any adipose fat on me at all, it would be in the ass or the thigh area. So if you want some flavor, that's where you'd go. Because all my other meat is going to be...
for flavor, frankly.
It's going to be very tough. Anything on the upper body, you're talking about the shoulders, that's going to be really tough, stringy meat.
You know what? I feel better about it being tough and stringy.
Really? You don't want it to be juicy and succulent?
No, exactly, right? Like, if you're eating some, like, meat that you don't want to eat, and you're like, here it is, and it's all, like, gooey and fatty, and... No, I'd much rather have it be, like, dry and sort of, like, rough, and I could just chew it up and eat it.
So we've established that you would eat me. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Would you eat me? Would you feel bad at all about it?
No.
Really?
Would you care?
Well, there's this weird moral...
It's not weird.
I mean, I guess it's not weird. But it seems like a very strong prohibition within the human psyche not to eat other people.
Yeah, definitely.
And so...
And for good reason.
Yeah, I think so. But you think it would only take that extreme situation of being lost in the taiga with my frozen corpse that would get you to overcome that prohibition?
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be a life or death situation. It couldn't be a situation where I was, like... a little peckish.
Yeah.
Didn't have dinner. I was like, well, I guess I'll turn to
So it wouldn't be like the first day.
No, it wouldn't be like I was like on the outskirts of Kazan and I was like, I could probably make it tonight, but maybe I'll just sit here and eat his ribs. And then I'll go in there and get some cabbage in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be like, it'd be that or nothing.
So would you ever slaughter someone for the purpose of eating them? If you knew that there was no way that you were both going to survive, would you be able to slaughter me? Maybe I'm sleeping, you know, I've huddled under some pine cones or some bracken, and we're there, like, freezing. It's the middle of the night, and you look over, and you know those old cartoons where they'd be stranded on a desert island, and suddenly their friend looks like a drumstick?
Yeah.
Do you think you could ever pick up a rock and just cave my head in?
No. Because all that's doing is, like, slightly extending the awful life that I'm already living, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to die on this fucking island anyways.
Well, what if Werner Herzog comes by on a snowmobile?
He's like, oh, can I help you? This island is very harsh.
Here we see that a friend has slaughtered his friend and started to eat his bones.
But, I mean, the idea that I've been walking across Mother Russia for a long time, and I'm assuming I'm going to run into, like, a village at some point.
Eventually, probably.
So I'm like, this will give me extend my ability to make it a little bit farther. Mm-hmm. So you die, and I probably just take as much of it as I could at the meat, and I just get all the gross stuff off it as much as possible.
What's the gross stuff?
Like, I don't know, veins and stuff. You know, and like gooey fats and like whatever else is in there. Going on. And then I just like close my eyes and just go and like eat it as much as I could.
Well, would you cook me first?
I didn't think I could have a fire. Could I have a fire?
You can make a fire.
Oh, if I can make a fire, I'd definitely cook you.
Okay.
I take the meat, I'd cook it up, and just eat as much as I could to get full. Leave your kind of like shredded carcass there, and I just take off and keep going. Yeah, following the sun, you know, and try to get to a village.
Yeah.
Would you do that, wouldn't you?
No, of course not.
You just die?
I could never eat you, Warren. That's a horrible thought.
No, I say go ahead and eat me. If I'm dead, eat me.
You want me to eat you?
Yeah, I'd rather you eat me and then have a chance to survive.
Are there certain parts that you'd prefer me to eat?
It's weird that you mentioned that. I was like, I don't think I'd eat your dick or balls.
Well, why would you? There's not really much going on.
That's weird because it's like that.
Actually, no. Wait a minute. Let me rephrase that.
I know it's like a Vienna sausage. That's why I didn't want to have
it. It would be a full meal. It would be quite satisfying, obviously. But I mean, I guess, is there muscle in the penis? Is it muscle? No, it's just like cartilage.
It's like cartilage, and then there's a sac for blood to go into.
So that wouldn't be very appetizing.
It's not very, no. So that wouldn't be, yeah. I don't think I'd do that.
No. So the last question would be, you devoured me. You know, you got your sustenance. You bit your lip, and you just went to it, carved me up, ate me. Do you think you would develop a taste for human flesh after that? And then would be never sated later on in life because you'd think of how delicious. I mean, everyone says that people taste like pork, supposedly. I don't know if that's true.
Everyone says that?
Everybody says that. And it makes sense, though, because if you think about us being omnivorous, you know.
We're omnivorous, so yeah, I guess that would make sense.
Yeah.
We're the same sort of flavor.
The other white meat.
This pork does have very, like, rich flavor to it.
Pork is delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I doubt I would be like, oh, I can never get another good meal like that. No. That great memory I had of eating my friend. It's like, no, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, and the last question.
Yeah.
When you did eventually make it to the happy people of the taiga and Werner Herzog gave you a lift home, when you were at the press conference later, they're like, oh, the nation mourns, famous podcaster Bradley dies in the taiga, would you admit to having eaten me, or would you just pretend that I had died and that you buried my corpse?
You have to admit it.
Really? Because you think they would find my corpse
later? What always happens
later?
in these situations is that they end up being like, oh, they discovered the famous podcaster, and look at this, his body's been picked like someone had like torn it apart to eat it, not like a animal.
That
like
happened after I left. Yeah, you could just say that you left me completely intact, and that somebody else must have come along.
It must have been another person
Maybe
there.
It was
like
Werner Herzog.
But no one lives for thousands of miles around there. I'd be like, well, it's quite a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. No, I don't know. I remember seeing a Grey's Anatomy once years ago where some like hikers had come down and they'd rescued them, and only 3 of them had made it or something. And the 4th one, they all kind of looked at each other like, he didn't make it. And you're like, this is interesting. And of course he stumbles in eventually and like has to rescue himself, so they left him because he was in some dangerous situation. They didn't need him, but they kind of left him. And it's like... I
thought that would be a weird plot device for Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, I know. It'd be pretty intense. But I mean, what would people do? People wouldn't be upset, would they?
I think they would.
People didn't hate that team that ate everybody alive.
Yeah.
I did what I needed to do to survive in that situation. It wasn't like a situation where I killed you and ate you.
Yeah, but they had Ethan Hawke and other people, like attractive Argentinians with beards and stuff.
I think I can pull off an attractive Argentinian with a beard, especially after all that time. I'll be very tanned and lose a bunch of weight, and I'll be like...
Tanned?
In the sun all the time?
In the taiga?
Oh, yeah.
It'll be snowing all the time.
Even that makes you even more tan.
Yeah, I guess.
The reflection of the sun.
Yeah, that's true.
I have like...
So then when they find my corpse and it's all mangled, you would leave my head intact. My viscera would probably be gone. You would eat my succulent shoulders and
You know what
arms.
I try to do? Is find a couple branches or something that I can make a little cross above your head. Because that looks way better when they come back and find you and they're like, at least he was respectful of the dead.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were going to like tie them on to the parts of my body that you had chopped off, so I would be this weird like stick figure with flesh hanging
See,
out.
he's fine. He's fine. No, nothing like that. And I wouldn't leave you in like some like unflattering way, like bent over or something. Yeah. I'd be like, ha, 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 ha. And I'd do something that looked respectful. So when they eventually went back and found you, they'd be like, he ate him, but he treated the corpse right by putting a cross over it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do anything to me. Nobody would be upset with me for doing that.
Well, I don't think you would suffer any actual legal ramifications or repercussions or anything, but I think people might look at you a little strange after that.
But I mean, I was going to die.
Yeah.
So I'll take the strange looks.
All right. Well,
I survived. I triumphed. I am alive.
All right. I think that's enough time for the Warren and Bradley Show this week. I've been one of your hosts, Bradley Victor.
I'm the other host, Warren Van.
Saying...
You can eat me if I die.
Thank you.
This has been the Warren and Bradley Show, brought to you by Warren Van and Bradley Victor. For podcast news and information, like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/Warren and Bradley. Follow the show on Twitter at Warren and Brad. Subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. For episode archives and episode pictures, go to warrenandbradley.com, and to contact the show, write to podcast at warrenandbradley.com.
What? Like, upset? And I went, yeah, just, you're tied. And he's like, what am I supposed to do with it? I don't know what to do with it. I tried to tie this for like 5 minutes this morning. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay, this is way more than I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
So then I ended up on the street. He took his tie off. I had to put it around myself and tie it and then give it back to him so he could put it back on.
Was he pleased when he put it back on?
He was happy with it. And I gave him the pointer. Like I did a half Windsor knot for him because he just had like a crappy 4-in-hand knot. Yeah. It looked like shit. Because he's way too big to have a little tiny knot. You have to, there's things that you have to take into consideration. I'm not gay. And then I gave him the tie back and he was very pleased, but he was just so... if I were a giant 6'6" large man wearing a stubby little tie and somebody jokingly pointed that out to me, I don't think I'd get as upset as he did. Maybe he had an important job interview or something coming up and he was worried that his tie would embarrass him.
It's weird that this guy's wearing a tie.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on.
If you're that sloppy about your appearance, it's odd that you'd
Well, it
put
looks
on a
like
tie.
he had tried really hard.
Like, this is the best he could do.
Maybe. And
That's bad.
maybe he had it in his mind that like, well, here we go. I'm all put together. And then some asshole lights a cigarette and then tells him that his tie is
Just got to get on YouTube and watch the tie tying videos. I used to not remember how to tie a tie, and then I'd get on there and they'd show me.
There's a lot of great instructional videos.
Oh,
Bow ties,
for anything in
cravats,
life at this point,
ascots.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I know I had a crab a while back.
You had crabs?
a crab.
Oh,
singular.
just
one crab.
Don't they breed like
someone
crazy?
had given to me? I can't remember how I got it, but I was like, I'm going to cook this crab.
Oh.
So I didn't know what to do with it. I don't know how to clean this crab.
Okay, so we're talking about crabs.
We were talking about a crab.
Yeah, crabs that you eat.
And I watched a YouTube video, and the guy just showed me how to do it, and before you know it, I'm eating crab.
Did you boil it alive?
Yes.
I don't know.
So there's a disagreement about this.
What are you supposed to like knock them over the head or something?
There's other people that just rip them apart.
Ugh.
Like they're live and they just tear them apart and they're like, there you go.
Yeah. I remember as a little kid, my dad had crab pots every once in a while, and we'd go out and get crabs. And I can remember my mom putting them in this big pot, and I could hear them like banging on the side of the pot. And I was always kind of horrified by that as a child.
It's hard to know how bad it is for them.
Yeah, I don't know. They say the whole thing is if the water warms up slowly, it's not horrible, but I don't know.
That's what you're supposed to do with frogs.
If you put me in a pot and slowly heated the water until it got to be boiling, I would be comfortable for a while, and then it would be boiling, and I'd start screaming.
But I mean, that's the whole point, though. You're not a frog or a crustacean.
No, but they have to have some nerve endings going on there, don't they?
They do, but it gets back the whole concept of if they're suffering or if there's like a pain response.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
It's difficult to say.
Better than me. The other annoying thing that happened, I don't know how many episodes ago, we mentioned the piss prongs, the trident piss, when the stream becomes split for some reason.
Yeah, I remember that.
The other day, I woke up completely befuddled and groggy and stumbled into the bathroom. I didn't have my glasses on, and I'm pretty much completely blind without glasses or contacts. And urinated. Finished urinating, shook it off, took a little toilet paper, wiped the tip off. That's important to do.
Yeah.
Put it back in my pants, and then took a step and went, oh! And slipped in the puddle of urine that apparently I had pissed all over the ground without noticing because the stream had been split. Fell in the urine. I was wearing these like pajama pant things.
I don't understand to just
yeah, but there's like
assume
there's me wearing tight pants, or there's me, I don't know, having laser hair removal done on my facial hair.
If you were mincing around with your tight pants and stuff one
I don't
day,
mince.
And you had like a little baby, and you're like walking around, and then people will be like, "Look at that gay dude with a baby."
Okay, first of all, I do not have an effeminate voice in any way, shape, or form as I speak like this to make sure the point is driven home.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to defend my sexuality. Everyone knows clearly that I'm straight.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
Completely
straight.
Oh,
yeah.
And if I had a baby and I was walking around with a baby, nobody would think, oh, look at the gay man with the baby. I don't know.
People wouldn't think that.
They wouldn't think that. I don't know what my point is, but I just found it struck me as odd that just in the space of 5 minutes, I saw all this going on. And then this really big fat man came up, and he was wearing a tie. But he was one of these guys who's like 6'6", and huge, like not like morbidly obese, but just big, like a big barrel-chested dude. And he had this dress shirt on that was too small, so like the shirt tails were coming out of the top of his pants, and his tie barely made it past his sternum. It was just like, ooh, just kind of barely hanging there. And as he came up, he asked me for a light for a cigarette, and I gave him a light, and I was feeling folksy and friendly. And so I insulted him, but in a folksy, friendly way.
What'd you say?
I was like, yeah, buddy, your tie is way too short. And because I was going to give him some advice on how to tie his tie properly. Because your tie is supposed to go right to the top of your waistline, basically.
Was the back skinny part of the tie longer than the front part?
It was way longer than the front part, yeah. He just didn't tie it properly.
Yeah.
And so I say this kind of in a joking, innocuous manner. And he went, 5 different couples within the space of like 5 minutes. But I mean, okay, first of all, what's the percentage of the population that's gay? It's less than 10%.
But the percentage of the population that's gay that has babies that hangs out in downtown Bellingham is much higher.
Well, it just seemed like a disproportionate amount of people were gay and had babies walking around downtown. And I'm not making any sort of moral judgment on this. It's totally cool. But it was just odd. Like, there was this big lesbian with like a baby Bjorn. Yeah. And she had this baby and she was like, with the baby. Uh-huh. And then her partner came and I was like, okay, lesbian couple with a baby. Yeah. That was the first couple I saw. I was like, oh, that's nice. Then I saw a guy who was just like groomed to the T. And if I had just seen him walking by himself, I'd be like, okay, gay guy. Yeah. But he had a baby Bjorn and he was like, ha ha ha, with his baby. But then a woman came and he was holding her hand and called her honey. He's like, okay, honey, let's go. And he had the baby.
Well, that's probably not a gay man.
Well, either he's just the most effeminate heterosexual person in the world, or he was like closeted or something and had a baby.
Okay, this is the thing about your supposition here. You see a man with a baby with a wife.
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, that's a gay man because he's lispy and well groomed.
He was the most effeminate heterosexual I'd ever seen in my life.
Oh.
And then I saw just a guy by himself. I don't know if he was single or not. And he had a stroller with a baby, and he was like, la la, singing some song to the baby as he was walking by.
Yeah.
And he was wearing crazy rhinestoned jeans and this really like fancy shirt, kind of silky looking and everything. And just like, I don't know, he just seemed way too well groomed to be straight with the baby. And I don't know, maybe
as a man who's mistaken for being a homosexual quite often, you're sure pretty well.
The views expressed on the Warren and Bradley Show are not necessarily those held by the hosts, Warren and Bradley, nor those of the proprietors of the website, warrenandbradley.com.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Let's make some magic.
It is magic time. Hello, and welcome once again to the Warren and Bradley Show. I'm one of your hosts, Bradley Victor.
I'm the other host, Warren Van.
It is episode 71 of the Warren and Bradley Show. The weather has changed for the worse. I'm sorry to say. It's raining.
We're back
cold,
to normal.
It's wet. Back to normal. It's fine. I was wandering around again. I think every intro segment starts with me wandering around downtown, but that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And I don't know what I mean by this or what we can glean from this, but as I was standing around downtown yesterday, I noticed all these gay people with babies. And I don't know if they're like adopted or if it was like a closeted gay person who had impregnated a woman and then took the baby and ran off with it.
How limited is your world? Don't you know this is what's going on?
I know that people adopt babies and everything, and that's nice. It's good because there's plenty of babies that need to be adopted.
Well, and if you're a lesbian couple, you get one of them gets inseminated and they have a baby.
But I literally saw 5